Hello and welcome to the Ride On Motorcycle Podcast, sponsored by Break Free. I'm your host, Jogo, and in this episode, we're bringing on my friend Bryan Kern, and he just completed the 2024 Hoka Hey Motorcycle Challenge. He traveled over 10,000 miles all the way from Daytona, Florida, all the way to Alaska, Homer, Alaska. But here's the kicker: no GPS, and he was required to sleep next to his bike every night. Oh, and did I mention he did this in 9 days and 20 hours? Absolutely remarkable. Can't wait to dive down into his experience. But before we do, a couple quick announcements. First on the list, as I mentioned in the intro, this episode sponsored by Break Free. If you don't know who or what they are, in a nutshell, they make a brake light that mounts onto the back of your motorcycle helmet. Doesn't use any wires, no Bluetooth. You just slap it on and it works. Fantastic product. And I'll give you a little more info on that here in a bit. Then next on the list, this just happened yesterday. I'm excited to announce I just partnered with Johnny K's Power Sports in Elyria, Ohio. And this is going to be the new home for all my practice sessions and private lessons. Huge shout out to them. I should be coming out with a schedule here in a couple weeks or so, letting you guys know when I'm going to hold these practice sessions, typically once a month during the riding season, completely free. And then this leads me into my last item on the list. If you haven't joined the Facebook group, a lot of people have in the past couple of days, which I greatly appreciate. Make sure you hop on Facebook, search Jogo Motorcycle Adventures, click join. We'll get you in there. In there, I'll post all my free practice sessions, when I'm going to have them and whatnot, create events. And I also post some stuff in there that I don't always post on YouTube. So make sure you join. All right. So now that we got all that out of the way, typically have an intro that I roll for my guests, but this is a special case scenario, not a content creator. So we're going to go ahead and bring in Bryan Kern, and here he is. What is going on, man?
Hey Joe, how are you?
Good. Hey, I definitely appreciate you coming on. Before we start diving into your experience, just want to go ahead and acknowledge some people that are in the chat here. Let's see here. We got Lee Sturgis, always 3 hours early, saying make sure you click that like and subscribe button. Appreciate that. We got MJ Coleman, always good to have you in here. Share Denon, I might have butchered it, but
Diamond, one of my friends.
appreciate you. Okay. We got Karen. Karen's always here. Appreciate you tuning in, Karen. We got Mark. We got Q from Riding and Wrenching. Oh God, here we go. Our neighborhood heckler. But all right. Appreciate you all tuning in. So let's just hop right into it, Bryan. So you just did the Hoka Hey challenge. So for the people that don't know you, why don't you just tell us a little about yourself and how you got into riding motorcycles?
Sure, yeah. Bryan Kern, I'm 52 or be 52 this year, and really didn't start riding bikes until 7.5 years ago, if you can believe it. So, wife and I, Tara, have 6 kids, and as the kids started to get to the ages where they were out of the house or didn't need us or didn't want us around, literally we were just kicking around one night and saying, hey, so we're going to need some other pastimes. It's not going to revolve around the kids anymore with softball, football, soccer, etc. So what are we going to do? And, so we're kicking around things like boats and lake houses and just stuff like that. And somewhere along the line, bike came up. And for whatever reason, I had a mental block on motorcycles for most of my life, because when I was growing up, my mom would have nothing to do with two wheels. I grew up on three-wheelers and that kind of stuff, but nothing on two wheels. And so it was always ingrained in me, no motorcycle, no motorcycle, no motorcycle. And wife and I are kicking this around. She said bike. And I'm like, motorcycle. Yeah. I'm a grown ass man now. I don't have to follow mom's rules anymore. And literally that's literally how it started. Just that simple. And so, pretty soon I'm bringing home the materials for a permit and going to get my permit, and ultimately getting my endorsement. And buying my first bike, and I started big. Started with a 17 Street Glide as my first motorcycle. So remember very rolling off the Toledo Harley Davidson lot, and when I look back now, there's no chance. I had no business being on that motorcycle, no chance at all. So but that's where it started. It all stemmed from that little exchange, kids out of the house. So
Okay, yeah. So you didn't really have any influence of getting a bike, except for your wife telling you to get one, which
yep.
that
Yeah,
all.
she grew up around it. So her dad rode and her family rode. And so she was used to it. She never rode herself, but she grew up around bikes and around that scene and riding on the back with her dad. That was some of her earliest memories. For me, it was nothing like that at all. Other than just I don't know, just a passion from a kid, like I said, on three wheelers and that kind of stuff. But for whatever reason, it locked in. When we started talking about it, it locked in. And I promise from the first minute I got on it, it was over with after that. I firmly believe that the people that ride and really get it, they just get it, and you just can't explain it to anybody else. So
Yeah, and I didn't know that you've only been riding for 7 years. It could have fooled me. I actually train with Bryan out here in Ohio. Not right now because we're getting a nice storm, but excellent rider. For some of you that's seen some of my videos, this is the man that I rear-ended on my Road King Sonic and got the dented up fender. So you guys finally get to meet him. Awesome.
yeah,
But
that was a good
let's
day.
go ahead and yeah, excellent time out there in Florida. Basically where you started for this challenge. So let's move into question number 2 here. So for the people that don't know at home, what exactly is the Hoka Hey challenge?
Yeah. So in loose terms, Hoka Hey started out 10,000 miles in 10 days. That's kind of where it started back in 2010. When you say 10,000 miles in 10 days, this is no GPS, no hotels, no significant time inside at all. So you have to sleep by your motorcycle. Your bike is equipped literally with a fleet tracker like they use on trucks, for tracking fleets. So you have to put that on your bike so they know where you are and where you've been the whole time. And so when you get the directions, ultimately at the end, they take your fleet track, and they lay it against the prescribed directions and course, and you have to have followed the course. So I actually got an example of that. So it's literally like an Excel spreadsheet with directions. And this isn't like old school like MapQuest or Google Maps types directions. So these directions will say things like, you're on 53 north for 100 miles, and well, actually, it'll say. So you start out on 53 north, and then it'll say in less than 100 miles, you're going to go north on 19. And so when you think about that, most of the times, like on a MapQuest type program or Google Maps, anytime that road turns, if you're going through a city and it turns left and then you go 2 lights and it turns right and then you go a mile, it gives you all those very specific directions. Well, these directions don't say that. They just say you're on 53 north for 100 miles until you get to 19. And so if it turns, if it twists, if it does anything, you have to pay attention to that. You have to follow that. They don't give you every step of the way on it. So no electronic devices at all. You don't have, you can't use moving map, no GPS. You're not supposed to have any of those things. And so that's the basic premise. They have had some injuries and some deaths over the years, and so they have stretched it out now. The basic challenge is 14 days. So as long as you finish in less than 14 days, you're considered an elite finisher. So 10,000 miles in 14 days. But the original premise, 10,000 miles, 10 days.
Wow. Okay. Well, there's a lot to unpack there, and I'm excited to get into that. The extreme challenge. I mean, I did a what's the 1500 bun burner or something
Yep, Bunbury.
iron butt, and that's enough for me. I did that in 2 days, and I'm like, man, I can't even imagine going 10,000 miles. But
Yeah, it was every day. It was literally 18 to 20 hours a day riding the motorcycle. So you're sleeping I was sleeping 4.5 hours a night, but literally it was 18 to 20 hours a day riding a motorcycle, all weather, all times of the day. Just what it was.
Right. All right. So let's start from the beginning here. So I will we got a picture here of the route. So this was his route here, all the way from Daytona, Florida, ended up there in Homer, Alaska. And this is what his bike looked like when he first started. So nice and clean, and we'll show you exactly what it looked like afterwards. But for my next question here, we got what what exactly was your game plan going into the challenge? Because you've never attempted this before, right? This was your
Oh,
first time.
nope, nope. And realistically, right? So I'm signed up for 10,000 miles in 10 days. My goal, they do an end of the road party at 14 days. So my goal was definitely to make the party. I was thinking I could do it in 12. In my head, setting out. That's kind of what I had. It Yeah, as a thought process. And so, at the end of the day, that's really what I'm trying to wrap my mind around. If you look at my bike setup versus a lot of others, I'd say I was pretty much on the minimalistic side. Some of these guys deck their stuff out pretty good, but when you read through the forums and talk to participants that have done it before, to me, one of the biggest themes that I kept hearing throughout there was don't overpack, don't take too much stuff, because you won't need it, you won't use it. And so I feel like I adhered to that pretty well. Even with what I packed and took, I still took too much. But again, if you had a picture of all the bikes that left, I definitely was on the thin side, from a packing and a gear perspective.
Okay. Yeah. So when you're going into it, did you have like a set amount of miles that you planned on doing every day, like a whole schedule planned out, or you just kind of winged it?
I didn't, because I really truly didn't know what I was getting into. I had seen versions of the directions before, but again, not having really done it, it just had no clue. And so to me, it was really pretty simple. I was going to get up, I was going to get on the motorcycle, and I was going to ride until I couldn't. And that was
Right.
that was literally was the end of my game plan. When we left, so we left Daytona Beach at 6 a.m. On a Sunday, whatever day that was, 3rd or 4th of August. And, so they hand you the directions. And so literally I showed you a picture earlier. There's 7 pages, so there's along the way,
Yeah.
there's 3 checkpoints. So they hand you the first set of directions to the first checkpoint, which was in Arkansas. Well, there's 7 pages that they handed me right off the bat. I'm like, what in the heck is going on here? And on each one of these pages, I mean, there's probably like 30 lines on here. So that, the first to the first checkpoint was like 2,500 miles. I got 7 pages. There's 200 and some individual directions that I have to follow, taken off out of there. And, it's just like, all right, game on. And oh, by the way, we're hearing about Tropical Storm Debbie at the time is over top of Florida, is coming to Florida. It's down south of Miami, south of Key West area as we're getting ready to depart. So the couple of days leading up to that, it's like, oh, are they going to postpone? They should wait. They should do all this stuff, but never once. They said, good luck, have fun, boys. So
Yeah, with those types of directions, man, I'd be absolutely screwed because I'm lost without my GPS. My wife will vouch for me, and to go go back to almost, it's funny to say, the olden days, paper directions and whatnot. Man,
yep.
had to have been a challenge.
I can't stress.
We'll dive into that.
Yeah, and I can't stress enough on these directions, right? People think again, I think most people correlate it to like a MapQuest, what we did 10 years ago or whatever, right? You print them out and it says go a mile, turn right, go 2 miles. These are not that. I mean, they are not that.
Yeah.
Like, I just challenge you to go into, I don't know, go into Chicago on a state route that runs through Chicago, right? Not the turnpike, but take a state route that runs through Chicago and just follow it through the city of Chicago with no help. Uh, that
Yeah.
that to me was one of the most intimidating portions of it. I mean, so I'll jump forward to the end because this really was just a big mind game for me. So the first few days, the first 4, 5, 6 days was a lot about navigations, directions, etc. Once you got out west, if anybody has traveled out west, there just aren't as many roads. So as you start to get more in the western part of the US, it really isn't so much about the directions and the navigation. Now you're just grinding out the damn miles. I mean, literally, there were some roads. It's like you're on here for 180 miles, and so you're just putting out the time. So I started in Florida in tropical storm, all these intense directions. Get out west, get up into Canada and through the western portion of Canada, all barren, not a lot of roads. Get into Alaska, more of the same. Finally, this is like day 9 or something. I end up in Anchorage. Well, I don't know. I've been in all this desolate area for so long now, not really having to worry about navigation. And all of a sudden, I end up in Anchorage, Alaska, which I don't even realize it's a big city, but I end up in Anchorage, Alaska at rush hour. And all of a sudden, the directions are like, you have to start following this stuff again. And holy cow. I mean, within 5 minutes of being in there, I pulled into a gas station and said, dude, you better get your shit together again, because this is game on again with these directions, because you're in a big city having to follow this stuff in rush hour. And man, it was huge, huge, huge mental task. And so again, without doing that, you just can't appreciate it. And the other beach, I tell people, so you got these directions. I got them mounted on a clipboard on my handlebars. So you're reading these directions. And oh, by the way, you're paying attention to traffic and people around you, right? You're doing all that stuff. Oh, by the way, the weather may be hot and sunny. It may be storming. It may be whatever, right? So you're trying to navigate. You're trying to pay attention to traffic around you. Oh, by the way, who knows what the weather's like right this minute? And on top of all of that, you're riding a motorcycle. You're doing all that while riding a motorcycle. So, it's just all these intense pressures and stresses on you that again, unless you're in the middle of it, man, it's hard to fully appreciate what's going on. So.
Right. Yeah. We got some questions rolling in that I'm going to hold until the end, but Lori Hernandez says, we love following Bryan. So amazing. Yeah. That's the other thing, is you're able to, click a link and see where all the riders were and track them live while they're doing it. Gerald Murray says, Thomas Guide for truck drivers. I don't know exactly what that is, but
I don't know what the Thomas Guide is, but again, I know we got trucks at work, and same thing. It's literally U.S. Fleet Tracker. It's the same kind of thing, so you can see all the same details on it. It did make it cool for participants. So I know, give a shout out to my Team Bryan folks that followed along with me, and my biggest fans, Mary Belo and Dawn Sherman, that are out there. They were always stalking and ready and waiting. So.
Yeah, it got to the point every morning I woke up just to check where you were. I'm like, man, this is nuts.
You probably knew where I was better than I knew where I was.
Yeah, I did, because I could see it on the map.
Now, for me, so I tell people I always knew 2 things. I knew the road that I was supposed to be currently on, and I knew the road I was looking for. Beyond that, I didn't know a damn thing.
Yeah. Karen says she gets lost with Google. That's relatable. Matt Hansen says, with that many riders following the same exact route, were there always other familiar Hoka Hey riders within sight or even formation?
Nah, there weren't. And so again, everybody rides this alone. There was a lot of people that paired up. So there were plenty of people that paired up or in groups. First couple of days, I was with a couple of rookies the first couple of days, and it just didn't work for me. Number one, I went into it wanting to ride it alone. I definitely didn't want to follow an experienced rider. That wasn't going to do it for me. I was with a couple of rookies, so that was okay. And I always led when I was with them, but it just wasn't working. I wanted to do it by myself. And so I think it was the morning of day 3 or somewhere in there. I finally just told them, look, I got to do this by myself. I don't mean anything, guys, but I gotta go. And so I did. So the rest of the time, I was by myself. And so did you see other people? Sure, of course, right? There was 250 of us or something that took off. So you always kind of knew if you stayed in one place for a few hours, somebody would come along eventually, right? I mean, you always kind of knew that. But I tell you, there was lots and lots of time where I didn't see anybody. There was nobody around. I was literally by myself. I mean, there was one day I remember texting or talking to Tara on that day, and I literally told her, I said, this is the weirdest day that I've had so far. I haven't seen anybody all day. I haven't been around anybody all day. I haven't interacted with anybody all day. It's almost like I'm not even on Hoka Hey because I don't know. I was in some kind of hole where nobody else was. And it, it just was. So you did see people, and yet you had a comfort that, like I said, if you just stopped long enough, somebody'd probably be along. But like I said, I was alone for a huge amount of time.
Yeah, that has to be tough as well. So let's move into the next question here. I'll end up going back to this picture that we showed when you first started off. But what items did you pack, and was there anything you wish you packed? I'll go ahead and bring this picture back up here. So as you can see, there's not much there on the back of your bike. All you got is your saddlebags. I'm sure were full of stuff, and then just that small little bag on the back there.
Yep, that's my standard Sturgis bag that I take with me. So nothing special there. And in my bag pretty much was my clothes. And so I didn't pull my packing list back out, but I think it was something. And again, remember, I'm thinking this is 12 to 14 days. So my packing list was like 6 pairs of socks, 6 pairs of underwear, like 4 t-shirts, no jeans because I had Klein gear, which is a whole nother topic. So actually, I think I had one pair of jeans for when I got to Alaska in there. Couple of sweatshirts probably in that bag. That was my clothes list that I packed. Had some food, I had beef jerky and I had some applesauce packets, and I'm a candy guy, so I had a crap ton of suckers and bubble gum and things like that in there. Had my camping gear, if you want to call it that. So I had a sleeping bag, a pretty low temperature sleeping bag, a very thin air mattress. And I wouldn't even call it an air mattress, more like an egg crate kind of blow up air pad. And then I had a bivy, which for anybody that doesn't know what a bivy is, I didn't take a tent or anything like that. A bivy is essentially like a tent for your sleeping bag. It's literally just a tent type material, like a cocoon, so that if it rained or was wet or whatever, I wouldn't get wet. But that was it. That was my camping gear. Had obviously my standard riding gear. Only shoes I had were the boots on my feet, my helmet, obviously. Man, I couldn't even tell you what was in the saddlebags. Not much, honestly. They were pretty empty. So that was tools. So I had my toolkit in there.
Right.
That was probably about the extent of the packing list, honestly, though.
Okay. Was there anything that you wish you would have packed while you were out on that trip, or you think you were pretty well covered?
No, I was good. Actually, to me, there's nothing that was missing. My worst thing I never had a good light setup. So remember, I got these directions mounted on a clipboard, literally on my handlebars. And so at night, you got to be able to read them. And so I literally just had a flashlight. Didn't even have it on a tether or nothing. I had it most of the time when I was riding at night, I had it tucked between my legs, honestly. And so when I needed to read the directions, I grabbed it out of between my legs and I lit up the directions, got my next one, and tucked it back in. So that's probably the biggest thing that I should have done differently, because wasn't the safest setup to be having to do that in the night and in the rain and all of those things. But really, if anything, I'd pack less. And the biggest thing I'd pack less, I promise I didn't need most of those clothes I had with me. Two, two, two sock changes, two underwear changes, 10 days. That's what I did. The rest of the time, I just didn't care. I just didn't care. One shower. I got a shower on morning of day 3, I think. One shower, two underwear changes, two sock changes. And after that, whatever. After a few days, you just didn't care.
Yeah, I mean, what's there to care about? You're not with anybody, so I mean,
Yeah.
don't ride until you get out there.
And you ended up, for me at least, I ended up being so tired, just mentally fatigued, that every little thing was just kind of an irritant, right? So even this air mattress I'm
Right.
talking about, the air mattress probably takes me 12 breaths to blow it up. No big deal. When you go deflate it, though, it was just a pain in my neck, and it annoyed me every single time because you had to get all the air out. And so, it probably took me 3 minutes. But oh my gosh, how annoying was it? Literally over 3 minutes, and that's the kind of stuff. So when it came time to, man, I should put a fresh pair of socks on. I'm not even taking my boots off. I don't feel like it. I did brush my
Right.
teeth. I did brush my teeth every day. I brushed my teeth and flossed my teeth every single day. So I never missed a day on that. But the other stuff, didn't care.
Yeah, I think I would agree. That would probably be the only thing that I would absolutely have to do every day.
Yeah. I did. That's how I started my day, right? So when I roll into someplace to sleep, I get all my stuff out and calm down for a little bit, go to sleep, and eventually you wake back up, and that's pretty much first thing, right? Brush my teeth, floss my teeth, and start putting camp away and roll. So
Right. Yeah. All right. So let's move into the next question. So you started the trip, and in the beginning, started a little rough because you mentioned that hurricane that was coming in. So what exactly happened, and how did you end up handling it?
yeah, so we leave Daytona Beach. It was not raining, but it didn't take long, and we were starting to be in the rain, because we're headed to Key West first, so we're going south directly towards where the tropical storm was at the time. Again, remember, none of these are direct paths, right? So when I say we're going towards Key West, well, it's back and forth. If you zoom in and could see the actual path we took, we are back and forth across Florida all the way down there. So I don't recall how long it took me to get from Daytona to Key West, but it was literally most of the day. And so here you are, when you're farther up towards Daytona, tropical storm wasn't so bad, but it was raining as you get closer. The winds get worse, the rain gets worse. I think there was 3 separate times that my phone gave me active tornado warning hits. The kind that says there is a tornado in your area. You need to seek shelter immediately. Those kind of warnings. And so I'm looking around, I'm in Florida. You can see a pretty long ways. I'm like, I don't know. I don't see a tornado. Does shelter include climb gear and a helmet? Because that's what I got. And never stopped, never even really thought about stopping, just kept going. Ultimately get to Key West or Key Largo. Anybody that's been to the Keys before, all the bridges that take you from down to the Keys. And I'm telling you what, that is the absolute 100% worst weather I've ever ridden in my entire life. I mean, it was nasty. You're going across these bridges, you're wide open, exposed. The rain was pretty severe, but the worst part was the wind. And I have no idea how much these gusts were, but they were easily 40, 50, 60 mile an hour gusts, maybe more. And they were gusts, right? So again, for riders, right? So it's leaning on you, it's letting you go. It's leaning on you, it's letting you go. It's leaning on you, letting you go, right? The whole time, all the way down to Key West. And I mean, it was bad. I mean, and I've told this story to a few people. So if you've been down to Key West before, off to your right, there's a kind of a short concrete barrier, right? It's probably, I don't know, 2.5 foot wall. It's not like one of these nice high walls that's there. You can easily see over it when you're riding your bike. To the left of you, you got 2-lane traffic. So here you are riding in this gust and rain, and there was actually traffic there. So I got cars coming at me that way, that every time the wind lets up, I'm leaning towards running into the traffic. When the wind hits you, I'm leaning towards the wall. And so there was multiple times that, I'm like, okay, so I don't know how this is going to end. I don't know if I'm going to get a choice, but if I get a choice, do I want the wall or do I want the oncoming traffic? If I get the opportunity to influence, which way am I going to try to influence it? So that had that thought multiple times. And then I fortunately been through some training with some pretty good instructors. And one thing always sticks with me that they tell you is, you know what, these motorcycles can do a lot more than you give them credit for. So no matter what, never quit riding the motorcycle. And so that's ultimately what the thought was going through my head. Just keep riding the motorcycle. So.
Yeah, that had to have sucked the life out of you too, because I don't know how long that storm was, but I mean, even if it was just 30 minutes of that straight, that's gotta
Yeah,
it'll take a toll.
no, it's 3 to 4 hours from Key Largo to Key West on a good day. We were in the suck.
Holy smoke.
Yeah, we were in the suck for that whole time. And again, I didn't know this at the time, but evidently a lot of people stayed back at the top of the Keys. They just didn't go through it. There was a number of us that did. And I consider myself pretty darn lucky, honestly, that I pushed through it. Coming back out of Key West, I've got a photo in there even that shows Key West. It quit raining, so it was good when we were at Key West. Coming back out, it wasn't nearly as bad. But then, ultimately, Yeah, so there's my Key West photo. So it had quit raining, so I'm pretty good when I get there and coming back out. It rained, but it was better because the tropical storm had moved up the coast a little ways. But you got to remember, the next day it's making landfall up more in the panhandle of Florida, and it turned into a Cat 1 hurricane. That's exactly where I'm headed. We're running right back into it. But I consider myself and some of the front runners very fortunate because we were in the front side of it. It was raining, it was windy, it was nasty, but that rain hadn't sat there for hours yet. The guys that waited and the guys that were 6, 8, 10 hours behind us, uh, all that rain soaked in. And so pretty soon they're dealing with fallen trees and debris and sign. They're dealing with a whole bunch of other stuff that we just didn't have. So I consider myself pretty lucky that we just went ahead and pushed through. And really that next day in the Cat 1, that was better than Key West. Key West was just it was awful. So, but again, I never, it never occurred to me to quit riding. I just, let's go, let's do this. So,
Yeah, that definitely takes some balls. You look awfully happy in that picture that you made it through all that. So,
man, I always smile. If you're taking a picture of me, it's likely I'm going to have a smile on my face no matter what. You put me on a motorcycle, I promise it's a good day. So,
yeah, we got G Pops and Gigi. They say, "Wow, what a cool dude." Oh, Bryan Kern. I thought they were talking about me, but skip. Charlie's riding adventures, definitely Wall. All right. So actually, let's do one more question and then give you guys a little more info on the break free. So for question number 6, let's switch back to over here. For question number 6, you already answered this a little bit. Um, how hard was it to navigate that 10,000 miles without using a GPS? You mentioned those directions was something else that you never really seen before, so that made it difficult. Was there anything else that you wanted to add about that?
yeah, so I promise I got lost a lot. Well, lost. So lost is involved. You can't find your turn, right? That's really what lost is. Something on the directions isn't making sense. So I never, some people on the challenge ended up going out of their way 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 miles and having to double back. I never made one of those kind of mistakes. My problems generally where I had the worst time were in these cities because ultimately, at times you could find your road. You knew where you were supposed to be. The trouble was you knew that you didn't get there the correct way, and that doesn't work. So when it doesn't make sense, you have to double back and try to understand that. So again, these directions say things like in less than 100 miles, you're looking for this turn. In less than 2 miles, you're looking for this turn. So you're trying to follow that, and they're approximations. They are never, well, I shouldn't say that. Sometimes they're exact. Sometimes they will say at 5 miles. And so you knew it was pretty darn close to 5. But when they say greater than 100, less than 20, it was just close, and so they could be off 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 miles. Generally weren't off dramatically more than that, but they were off enough that it would mess with your head, right? So now you're supposed to do something in 90 miles, you're out 95 miles and haven't found the turn. You keep going, or do you double back? Did you miss something? And so that's all the stuff going through your head. But my worst ones were cities. Absolutely put me in the big city and just get twisted up in a knot. There was at least 2 times that I can remember that I'm telling you, my lock and lean training and my pro rider training came in extremely helpful because I wore some of these cities out with U-turns and going back up and forth down roads, looking for my roads. And I'm talking, in a 2 or 3 mile area, spending hour and a half just circling, going every darn road around there, trying to sort out where the heck was I really supposed to turn. And then ultimately you figure it out and you're like, man, you are stupid. You are so stupid. So, but it's,
Yeah, and for all those people out there that don't think they need to take motorcycle training, especially slow speed stuff, they're like, I don't need that stuff. You have it right here, 10,000 miles, and he was using those skills pretty much the entire time.
oh, I promise, so I do consider myself a pretty good writer on this stuff. And I promise having that I don't know, just natural instinct with your bike. Being completely comfortable on that bike absolutely made the challenge easier because at the end of the day, I was confident in my ability to ride the bike. So I could spend the time on the directions and the other pieces, paying attention to traffic around you and all that stuff because I was comfortable on the motorcycle. If you weren't as comfortable on the motorcycle, man, that's going to command your attention. You're going to put your focus there, and you're going to mess up some of the other stuff for sure. So
Right. You don't even have to think about it, which is,
yeah,
again, I try to stress to everybody, get some training. You don't have to be doing anything ridiculous like 18-foot keyholes or anything like that. But I mean, all this stuff comes into play. Uh,
all the way down to getting comfortable dropping your bike and picking it up. I dropped my bike 3 times.
yeah.
I dropped it 3 times on this challenge. Some people, again, they drop their bike and it's like, oh my gosh, the world is ending. Oh my God, man. I don't know how many times you've dropped your bike, Joe. I've dropped my bikes plenty. And
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
it's just not even a big deal, right? You drop it, you learn how to drop it, and you know how to pick it up, and you pick it up. And so, to me, it was never a big
Yep.
deal. Nobody had to freak out. You didn't have to worry about it. I did have the extra excitement with my bag hanging off the back. When it fell, the front wheel would actually come off of the ground because because I had the weight hanging off the back end of it. And so now picking it up when you're tired after riding all them days, yeah, it was interesting a couple of nights to do that. But
Yeah. Now, one last question about the directions. Did you have to exactly follow that route? So like your tracker had to actually like show that you went that exact route that was printed out on your directions?
you did. I don't know how much forgiveness they really have in that. If you missed anything significant, I promise it would be a problem. But some of these turns, like in Key West, is a good example of it. Some of these turns were a block or two apart. I don't really know if you happen to miss one of them by a block. So, like getting to the Key West marker there, it was all flooded out on those roads, and so there was a flooded road right up next to it, and then there was a road a block sooner. I know some people took the road a block sooner, but I know the actual route was the one that was flooded out. I don't know what they do on what I would consider minor deviations. I don't know if they let them. I don't know if they let them go or not. So
Yeah. Because I would imagine you have to be pretty darn close so that way they know that you weren't using your GPS while you're doing that.
I promise you're not missing any major sections for sure. I mean, there's no way if you missed a big piece. Number one, it's not going to make sense. You're going to catch yourself eventually and have to turn around and correct it. So
Right, right, right. All right. We got quite a few questions in here, but as I said, we're going to hold it for the end. So hold your questions, everybody. I promise I'll get to them.
so
Three rows.
one more piece on the
Okay.
direction. So for me, for example, there was one turn I remember there was so it's the other piece I haven't even mentioned. This is no highway stuff on Hoka Hey. These are all secondary roads for the most part. Yeah, and so you had virtually no highway. But there was one piece where you might use a highway to just get between two roads. And so I was coming up over an overpass, uh, getting low on fuel. I looked to the right and I could see a gas station. I knew my turn was down to the interchange on this highway for a short stint. It was to the left. Well, I looked to the left. I can't see a gas station. And so instead of going over the overpass and making the left, I went down the ramp, rode up to the gas station, fueled up, came back. But in order to complete the circuit, so had I just blown past that interchange, I would have never crossed the overpass. And so I literally, after fueling up, got back off at that same exit, went over to where I had gotten on the ramp originally, did a U-turn at that point, went back across the overpass to make the turn the proper way. And so in the spirit of what you're supposed to be doing, I know that is correct. So
Oh, yeah, you're a better man than I. I couldn't do this by myself. There's absolutely no way. I would need somebody help lead me the right way. But all right. So we're about halfway through the questions. So I let you guys know that the stream's sponsored by Break Free. So let me go ahead and roll their promo and show you this amazing product that I use every time I ride.
When you're riding on two wheels, there's one rule you can't ignore. If they can't see you, they can't avoid you. That's why we have to do everything we can to be more visible while we're out on the road. In this video, I'm going to unbox and review the Brake-Free Smart Brake Light. Let's talk features for a second. This light is special because it's completely wireless. You don't need to use any apps or connect it via Bluetooth to use it. So how does it work? It has sensors in it so it knows when you're braking or slowing down. This is great because sometimes we use engine braking to slow down. That means we're not using our brakes, so our taillights aren't going on. This will give the motorists behind you a heads up that you're slowing down. It has a rechargeable battery that's supposed to last 8 to 12 hours depending on which mode you have it in. This light is IP65 waterproof and weighs in at 7 ounces, so it's really light. For the light itself, it has 100 LEDs and it's a single one-button operation, so they keep it simple. We have the light all mounted to the helmet, now we have to test it. Let's roll, baby. Okay guys, we are on the bike. Let's test this bad boy out. Downshifting should illuminate it. All right, now I'm slowing down with the brakes. Making a left. Okay, so now we're coming up to the stop sign. We're going to do a hard stop. Should have blinked. All right, now we're going to do some head movements to see if this thing's going to blink or not. They claim that it won't, so we'll move my head up and down, side to side and stuff. All right, now I'm rolling off the throttle. All right, guys, that was the ride test. As you just saw, this light works exactly as advertised. So what do I think about it? This is a fantastic product. Not only does it look cool, it adds an extra layer of safety.
All right, there you have it. Huge shout out to Break Free for sponsoring this episode. If you want to check them out, it's something that I 100% promote. Absolutely love it. You can use my promo code JOGO10 and I'll get you $10 off of this light. And it's all linked down in the description. As I said, go ahead and check them out. All right. So let's hop right back into it here. So for my next question here, let's see. Question number 7. Before I bring up this question, let me bring up the pictures here. All right. So the question is, with the requirement of having to sleep beside your bike every night, how did you choose where you slept and what you bring to sleep with? And let me pull up these pictures right here. So I got 3 pictures. Let me hide this little banner. So this first picture, where exactly, you probably don't know exactly where this is, but what's the area?
I might remember. All I can see is the Key West picture right now, Joe. So.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, well, that's not good. Let's try this again. Oh, let me hide that. Can you see it now?
Yep, I see it, and so I know where that one was. Okay. So that night, so a couple of things, I guess I'd say just to start with. So to me, again, everybody's different about this stuff. The way my brain works, I just don't tend to worry about things, right? So a lot of people worried about animals and bears and I don't know, all those kind of things. To me, the only thing I ever worried about was the boogeyman, and the boogeyman's always a person, right? So if I was sensitive to anything, it was people. I was never worried about wildlife or anything hurting me. But if somebody's going to be bad, it's probably going to be some individual. So to me, when I knew, I never pre-planned anything. So it was really a matter of, boy, I'm getting tired. I need to start figuring out where I'm going to sleep tonight. And you start looking. For me, I never wanted to sleep in a big city if I could avoid it because of the boogeyman, right? If there's a bad guy, he's probably going to be at a big city versus a small town. I don't know if that's right. It's just what went through my head. I would try to sleep on the outskirts of town as opposed to more in town when I could. And for me, it was any place that was just kind of out of the way, deserted, unlikely that anybody was gonna bug you, right? And so that's what I looked for. A lot of gas station type stops is where I ended up for the most part. This particular night, I actually stopped. This was down a hill. Up on top of that hill, there's an extremely nice gas station, way too darn nice. And at the end of the day, that was a problem. I couldn't sleep there because it was too nice. There was no place to just tuck and hide. Everywhere that I would have slept, I was too exposed, and I was like, man, somebody's gonna bug me if I try to sleep here. Yeah, and so I looked over the side of this hill and I see that picture that you had up there. I see this deserted, dark just spot. I see this side by side sitting there. I'm like, man, that's perfect. So I roll down the hill. I'm like, I'm good. I pull my bike in beside this side by side. I throw my sleeping bag and bivvy there, and I'm good. And I'm like, man, I'm tucked in. I'm perfect. There's nobody around. There's a street up behind me, but they couldn't see me from where I was. I'm like, this is gonna be the best sleep ever. Well, it took about 45 minutes, and I had two fine officers kicking at my feet, saying, "Hey, you need to get up and you need to vacate." So it ended up. They said this is private property. This is part of a hospital complex or medical complex or something. Didn't care what I was doing. Didn't care I wasn't going to be there very long. Didn't care about anything. Get out. and so I did. Threw all the junk on the bike and I rolled up the hill. I found a spot right around the corner that was actually a wonderful marijuana dispensary. So nobody bothered me up there. So
They're real chill, I bet.
they were extremely chill. Nobody saw them. I don't remember what pictures. Yeah. So that's where I ended up. I got booted from down below and I ended up at Puffin here. And so literally that's their front door. I pull the bike in, and back to sleep I go. So.
Okay. Well, now the sign makes sense. I was looking at that picture. I'm like, I wonder what that place is. But now it all makes sense. Green light, Puffin.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so that's another
third one right there.
Yeah. So again, that's a gas station. You can't see it in this photo, but there's a gas station off to the one side here. I'm way out of out of the way. Those are actually electrical charging stations that weren't being used. So I just tucked in behind. Okay. But you can see it's dirt and gravel and just that's it. That was pretty typical kind of night for me. It was just trying to find some place tucked out of the way where nobody was likely to bug you. I did not get bothered anywhere other than that one night. The rest of the time it was never an issue, but pretty standard. Just roll in. I never asked for permission. I never talked to anybody. I just tried to stay out of the way and mind my own business. You got to remember, I'm rolling in, going to sleep at midnight, 1:00 in the morning, and I'm back out of there by 5. So those times of the day, there's really nobody around. If it was, if I was really at a 24-hour place or a truck stop, not my jam. Probably not where I'm going to stay because again, it's just too many people around. So.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And it doesn't even look like. Is there a pillow in there, or you just?
I do have a pillow. I have a pillow. My daughter and her fiance got me a blow up pillow, so I did have that, and that's key. I tried using my jacket one night and it wasn't as good, so I always blew up my pillow.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to survive without something underneath my head. So we got Kelly B gliding in here. Always good to see you, Kelly B. And Southern Hog said I would avoid the city too, no doubt. But a lot of the ride probably wasn't in big cities, I would imagine.
It wasn't. I swear they put you in there just to mess with you. One of the other spots, I think it was Memphis. We ended up going through Memphis. Oh my God, what a mess! And so again, I think it was intentional. Because when they give you these directions, if you follow the Hoka Hey Facebook pages and that stuff, they show you all these funny signs like haha, typical Hoka Hey road. Well, you know what? After a while, they did kind of develop a little bit of a theme. And so sometimes if you were messed up, you kind of had this feeling like, man, this don't feel Hoka Hey. This is too easy, too convenient. The Hoka Hey stuff is harder than this. And so I swear they have a knack for finding confusing intersections, confusing exchanges, and just running you through that stuff. So there wasn't a lot of big cities, but they did find some. The worst part was, a lot of times, especially out west, you could see you were kind of coming up towards civilization, right? Because you can see for a long ways. Well, the thing you never knew, you may have a turn before you get there, right? So you think you're coming to civilization. Well, shit, you got to follow the damn directions, right? And so just about the time you think you're getting there, oh, no, you're not. Your road's here. You got to go this other way. And so fuel, sleeping, all of those things became important, right? Because They didn't tell you where to get gas. They didn't tell you if there was going to be gas there. They didn't, you didn't have any of that. You don't have GPS to look for. So when you're getting low on gas, you didn't pull out your phone and say, "Hey, where's the closest gas station?" All of that's against the rules for Hoka Hey. So you gotta figure it out on your own.
Man, I can only imagine how much goes into just planning it for everybody. Like, okay, planning this entire ride. Like it's got to take, I would imagine, months just to get the route together,
Yeah, so they only do Hoka Hey every other year, and so that's my understanding is that's what they do in the off year. They plan the route. So the 24 route, the picture you showed at the beginning, so it actually was a throwback to the original 2010 route. So Hoka Hey started this in 2010. Jim Red Cloud started it back then, and initially it actually had prize money attached to it that created some controversy. But that route was the original route. And so because this was the 10th running of the Hoka Hey, they wanted to honor that 10th anniversary. So it's a repeat-ish of the original route. They obviously updated it because it was, 14 years ago, and they changed some of the directions and the way those were written. But it's essentially the same route they ran in the inaugural event.
Wow, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, the other piece of that, I didn't say it earlier, that I think is really worth mentioning. The whole Hoka Hey thing, it really is founded. It comes from Jim Red Cloud, and so he's indigenous. He's part of the Lakota Sioux background, and it was created to bring awareness to some of the plights and the problems that the indigenous population faces. And so that's really where it came from. And so if you go on the Hoka Hey website and read, their intentions are to create what they call warriors out there, advocates, to really help bring these things to light and make sure that people are being treated appropriately on those kind of topics. And so Hoka Hey itself, a lot of the fundraising they do goes towards indigenous. So like the fundraising specific to Hoka Hey this year actually went to I think it's called Knitsy Indian tribe up in Alaska. So anything directly related to them went to that group. I think I shared a photo with you of a girl that's part of the program getting her first motorcycle ride. But then on top of that, Hoka Hey, because of what they stand for, they also encourage all riders to raise money for whatever charity you feel is appropriate. And so I just saw the totals here a few weeks ago. In total, the Hoka Hey participants raised almost 1.2 million for all kinds for all kinds of charities, right? And so this isn't specific to Hoka Hey. It's not specific to the Knitsy tribe, any of that stuff. You were able to raise money for your own charity. And so in total, almost 1.2 million for all these charities. So my charity was my charity was a New Perspective Foundation. And so I actually feel pretty good. Originally my goal was $5,000. I was able to raise more than 17,000 for my group. So I felt like I did a pretty good job, but when I saw 1.2 million for everybody, I was like, man, that's awesome. So.
Yeah, that's crazy. And it's crazy what motorcycles can do to bring people together and, support one another. Absolutely amazing. And then this picture that I have up right here, you want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah, that's in Homer. That's the finish line. You can see the finish line flag in the background. So I'd already been there, and so I don't remember the young girl's name, but she was one of the benefactors from the programs that the Knitsy tribe was raising money for. And so she had never been on a motorcycle, and so I volunteered to take her for her first ever ride. And so she was pretty excited about that. She got on, and she had a school teacher there with her and said, just a quick ride around the block. And so we get on. And of course, I asked right away, you up for a quick ride around the block, or you want to go for a little longer ride? And she didn't hesitate. Let's go for a longer ride. So she was pretty excited. So it was cool to be able to have that opportunity to take her on her first ride.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, we'll get to the finish line here in a bit, but let's move into the next question. Question number 8. So this, as we discussed, this challenge had to be mentally taxing. How did you stay focused? And was there any point in time where you just thought about throwing in the towel, giving up?
Yeah, so it absolutely is mentally draining, 100%. So there's, you know, a couple events that stand out in my mind. Tara would tell you, my wife would tell you that there was a day that I told her I was ready to be done. I don't recall that exactly, and I certainly don't recall it the way that she said it. But you know, she wouldn't fib about it. So evidently, I did have a point in there somewhere where I told her I was done, and evidently she had to get my head back in the game. I don't think I ever really would have quit, but according to her, I said I was done. I was over it. So that definitely happened. But the biggest thing is, you know, again, riding 18 to 20 hours a day, 4 hours of sleep, you know, that it just, you are absolutely fatigued physically, mentally. Your brain just does not function properly. And so I know I had 3 or 4 nights where just bad decision making. And it was always at the end of a long day, you know, when I was tired and your brain wasn't functioning, and it was, you just made bad decisions. I see it now. And so, you know, in the future, I'll do better because I know what I did. You know, there was one that I'm not particularly proud of, that it was my first experience like this. I don't remember what day it was, 4, 5, 6, somewhere out there, but we had one spot, only spot on the challenge where they said, "Hey, you need to fuel here because you're going to go." I don't remember what it was, 120 miles, 140 miles, 100 miles, something like that. You're going to go a long way with no services. So you need to fuel here. You need to make sure you're good on fuel. Only spot on the whole challenge they told us that. And so I'm thinking, all right, cool. You know, I'm good. I fueled up. But when they said no services, right, that just didn't exactly register to me, you know? So here I am fueled up. It's probably 9 or 10 o'clock at night at this point. It's late in the day, and maybe not making my best decisions. I'm thinking, no big deal. I'll knock out this 120-mile segment and I'll look for a place to sleep, right? This is out west, high speed limits, 120 miles. Shit, that's a couple hours. No big deal. I can knock this out. Yeah, well, this was the most deserted piece of road that I've ever been on in my life. When it says no services, there is nothing. There's nothing. There's not a house. There's nothing. And now it's, you know, it's getting late at night. It's 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. And here I am, been riding all darn day. There's nothing around me. And I'm literally falling asleep on the motorcycle. And so in hindsight, you know, all there was some very small pull-offs, which I should have used and should have taken a quick cat nap. Wasn't smart enough at that time to do that. So I kept riding, falling asleep. The other problem I had was back to my, I say I'm not afraid of very much or anything, but man, where I was, when you turn the motorcycle off, it was black. It was black and you couldn't see anything. And I'm like, yeah, no, I can't do this. And so I kept riding that night. That 120 miles or whatever it was, I think took me more than 3 hours, 3.5 hours, 4 hours, because the last 40, 50, 60 miles, this was Bryan logic. I set my cruise at 30 miles an hour on a speed limit road that was probably 65, 70, 75, something like that. I set it at 30 so that if I went into the ditch, I didn't go in at full speed. That was literally my mentality. And so that's the kind of stuff. And I remember at my interview, so Beth Durham is she's the director of the Hoka Hey, and you do an interview with her to get accepted. And I asked her specifically, I said, "You've had people die." I said, "Is it just freak accidents? Is it animal encounters and that kind of stuff? Or is it part of the challenge?" And she said, "It's absolutely part of the challenge because people take on risks and do things they shouldn't be doing. And the sleep thing is a big part of that." So, yeah. So that's a big piece. That was absolutely my worst piece on the whole thing. So
yeah, being tired and being on a motorcycle does not mix. You're not thinking straight. You make stupid mistakes, and unfortunately, I mean that's pretty much this challenge. That whole time, you got to be just exhausted for the most part because the adrenaline's got to wear off eventually when you first start. You know.
Yep. It absolutely does. It just wears on you. Like I said, after 6, 7, 8, 9 days, I mean, it just wears on you. So, and I was willing to sleep. So that was the other piece that, you know, when I laid down at night, I always set an alarm normally I set it for 5 or 6 hours ahead of whenever I laid down. And I was always willing to sleep. I just couldn't. Yeah. I just absolutely after about 4 hours, I would wake up. And once I was awake, it was over with. There was no point just sitting there. So,
yeah. And that's a good lead into my next question here. So not everyone makes it out of this challenge alive. Like people have literally died doing it. Did you have any close calls? But before you share that, you sent me a picture here of somebody that
Yeah.
had a close call. Let me go ahead and bring this up. I got to shut off this picture. And then where's it at? Where's it at? Sorry. Oh, here it is. All right. So if you guys can see that, let me take this banner off here. It looks like this guy ran into the ditch during the challenge. This is during when you were doing it, right?
Yep, he went into the swamp for sure. So that was in Florida. That was probably day 2 or so in Florida in Hurricane Debbie, and so that was actually, it was a group. So Junie and Jimmy, good friends that are also part of the Hoka Hey family, and I'm not sure exactly who was riding with them, but in the storms, in the rain, went into the ditch. Went into the water. Was not hurt. The bike was flooded, and so it took them, I don't know, it took him a good day and a half to get the bike flooded, unflooded and straightened around to where he could ride again. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff. I mean, that's just one example of what really happened. I don't know how many people had the scenarios during the challenge, but it was more than one. So, I can think of 4, 5, 6 right off the top of my head that, none serious, nothing fatal, but there was broken bones and, bad things that happened to people absolutely during the challenge because of what you're dealing with, from the weather to the fatigue to just the everyday risk that we all take riding a motorcycle. So.
Right. And do you know if this guy that went into this swamp, did he end up finishing the challenge?
I do believe that he finished. It took him a couple of days to straighten the bike out and get the water out of it, but I do believe that he was able to get back on the road. I know that group finished, and I believe he was still with them at the end. So,
yeah, I'm sure after that happened, he's like, I didn't come all this way to not finish this darn challenge. So
yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of stories like that. There's guys that had, well, there's one guy that ended up in the hospital. He wrecked bad enough and was in the hospital. And as soon as he could, he got his butt out of the hospital and he finished, even knowing that if you're admitted to the hospital, you don't get a finisher status. You're a participant, but you don't get finisher. He still finished it and rode to Homer, Alaska. So
yeah. So now, did you have any close calls yourself, except for you mentioned the one with the saddlebag?
Yeah, no, I never. So the 3 times I dropped my bike was never any big deal. And so really, the closest call I'd tell you is that night when I'm hallucinating, falling asleep, setting my cruise at 30. That was probably the worst. That was probably the worst situation that I had. There was animals along the way. I never felt like that any of them were imminent. Whenever I ride, I usually think about the biggest threat is all the other people around me. And honestly, this 10,000 miles, I'd never even had a close encounter with a person or anything, which to me that's pretty rare, honestly, because normally anytime you're out for a ride, somebody tries to get your attention. And so, no, I was very, very fortunate that never felt like that I was really in any grave danger or anything. So.
Yeah, that's definitely a good thing, especially for all that way you have to travel. So that makes the ride a little bit easier for you. So now let's go into question number 10. So you traveled all this way. Let me see. I can't remember if you sent me a picture of when you got into. Oh yeah, you did send me a picture when you got into Alaska. But when you finally finished or crossed the finish line in Alaska, what was going through your mind once you finally saw that finish line and said,
I'm just ready to be done. So day 10. So, I told you about my Anchorage experience earlier. Well, after Anchorage to Homer, I don't remember, it's still 4 or 5 hours or something. And it is, so I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but you can't have any moving citations on this thing or you're automatically disqualified. So you can't speed, you can't do any of that stuff. And so now, I'm 4 or 5 hours away. I'm a couple hundred miles. We're on this road, Alaska. I think it was Alaska 1. and it's going through all these little towns, and I'm just sitting there, I want to be done. I want to go fast and just get there, but you're going through these towns. It was one of the heaviest patrolled areas that I had been through. So I'm seeing police, so you can't go fast. I'm just like, get me off this motorcycle. I'm done. I never want to ride a motorcycle again. I never want to see a motorcycle again. I don't even like motorcycles. I was done. And so when you finally cross the line in Homer, it's like, I'm actually done with this motorcycle. That was the biggest thing. One of my good friends, Shell, rider of Dick, was there at the finish line waiting for me, which was cool. I think it was like 10 o'clock local time in Homer when I made it there. And so it's just this big sense of relief and accomplishment and enjoyment. And then, after about 5 or 10 minutes, it's like, okay, now what? And where am I going to sleep? Because you're just dead, right? And so it didn't take long for now what? It was really the next day where now it's just, I don't know, you're just in this like confused state, because I literally spent the last 10 days getting up, riding a motorcycle, just riding a motorcycle. And the next day it's like, what do I do? This is hard. Yes. So, but it was just, really the sense of accomplishment, especially for me, because I had literally zero expectation that I could finish in 10 days. And so when I was able to cross that line when I did, man, now I'm pretty damn proud that I was able to do that. So.
Yeah. And how long did you end up staying in Alaska after you finished that?
Yeah. So I'm going to have all my days messed up. I think that was a Tuesday morning or Tuesday or Wednesday when I got there. Might have been Wednesday morning. And my wife flew in that next day. So she flew up and met me there, and we stayed and left on the following Sunday. So we were there at the finish line for 4 or 5 days, welcoming other riders in and, just hanging out. It ultimately becomes a big Hoka Hey family, so there's, at the end of the day, even over these 10 years, there's not that many riders, so, my rider number is 1149. And so, that's the amount of people that have done this in the past. And so you do become a family. And so we just hung out and enjoyed their company, welcomed the other riders coming in. And,
yeah, you probably needed all those days just to recover, because not only you rode all the way there, but you have to get the bike back home to Ohio, right?
Look, I did. Some people trailered, so for me, I rode 1,000 miles to Daytona Beach to start. The Hoka Hey was about 9,600 miles is where it finished for me. Everybody's a little different depending on how much you got lost. And then, and there were detours, there was times. So I think I ran into 3 different times where, 2 different times there was literally mudslide, rock slides. And one time there was just a detour for wildfires. So that the course did change in real time. But then I think from Homer, Alaska back to the house was another 4,100 miles, I think. So all told, I was right at about 15,000 miles over that period of time, and happened to have a senior daughter. It was her last year of tennis. And so Dad had already been gone for a couple of weeks. Before I left, she was saying, it's my senior year of tennis and you're going to miss it to start. And you're doing this goofy motorcycle ride. And you're going to miss this. And so she's putting this pressure on. And so originally I was going to take my time coming back from Homer, right? I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to see a little bit of Canada and Alaska. But after all that, man, it was Hoka Hey, 4,100 miles home. So I did the 4,100 miles in 4 days. The last day I stopped just north of Minot, North Dakota. It was 1,250 miles from where I slept. This is on my way home. 1,250 miles from where I slept that night to my house. That was my last day coming home.
Oh my gosh, that's insane.
Yeah.
Well, next time you do one, you probably take your time coming back. You'll need it. But on the question number 11 here, what advice do you have for somebody that's wanting to attempt this challenge?
I'm sorry. I was my wife has been texting me, and so I didn't hear you. You got to repeat your question again. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's all right. I said, what advice would you have for somebody wanting to attempt this challenge?
If you're serious, do it. I mean, it's that simple. If you're serious, do it, and do it for yourself. This really is an individual challenge. Again, when it started in 2010, it had a little bit of this race element to it, but it really is intended to be a personal challenge. A lot of people say that they discover themselves and all of those kind of things on the challenge. And I would say you'll learn a lot about yourself. But if you're really serious, do it. And if you're not going to regret it, whether it takes you 10 days or 12 days or 27 days, get up, do it the way you want to do it, and go for it. I'm a big believer. I don't know, you get one trip, you get one life, and shit, don't regret it. So just go for it. All the preparation and all that stuff. They did the applications on February 1st, and they take 100 new riders every year, and so now I follow all the Hoka Hey pages, and I can see all the rookies or all the new entries, same shit that I did a year ago, right? And they're all excited and they're all asking questions, and it's good, for them to do all that stuff. But at the end of the day, man, hey, get yourself physically prepared, get yourself mentally prepared. Yeah, worry about the bike, worry about the setups, but it ain't really all about that at the end of the day. It's really just what you got inside of you. Do you got the guts or not? Do you got the fortitude to stick with it or not? Are you mentally strong enough to push through it or not? Yeah. I don't know. For me, it's really that simple. What sleeping bag should you take and how should you set up your directions? It's important. You want to be comfortable on that bike. You want to have that set up, get all that figured out in advance, put it on your bike, figure out what works, throw away the stuff that doesn't work, try again. Yeah. It's all personalized. What I did wouldn't be for everybody. And I know that, but it's all about you. But for me, I don't know. I have zero regrets about it and would encourage anybody that if you're at all serious, just do it.
Yeah. And from my understanding, people all ages do this. Wasn't there a lady that was like almost like 70 that completed this?
Yeah, I don't know what the oldest was, but absolutely, there's a gentleman, Chrisman, that's done every single one of them. So I don't know how old he is, but he's completed every single one of them. And so yeah, there's that. I think we had the youngest rider that actually was. I think she lives in Homer, Alaska. I don't remember if she was 18 or what the age was, but the youngest one ever to complete it. And then again, there's a lot of older people that do it, and everywhere in between. A lot of females. I know I always get lazy and say guys, but there was lots of females. Shell, one of my good friends, I think she finished 5th this year. Came across the line in 5th. She's a certified badass. So,
yeah, I'd say so. Keeping up with all the guys out there.
Giving the guys a run for their money.
Yeah, exactly. So for question number 12, I mean, do you think you'll ever do another one?
Already signed up, put my deposit in. So it opened up for new riders on February 1st. Returning riders can kind of put their money down whenever. And so I think it was this past Monday. I laid my deposit down. I'm all in for sure. So I told you my story. And when I came into Homer that day, I was done, hated motorcycles, never wanted to see them. I made it to a hotel room that night. I think I slept for like 12 hours. Woke up the next morning, and of course, the only way I have to get around is a motorcycle. But by the time I woke up the next morning, I'm like, I don't know, motorcycles aren't so bad, and then my wife showed up and got another night's sleep. But by that second night of sleep, the next day I was good. I was ready to go for a ride at that point. So,
yeah, you just needed a quick break from the motorcycle that was longer than 4 hours. That's all you needed to refresh yourself.
Yeah, I did. I did definitely need some good sleep and needed some companionship. I didn't tell you earlier, but that was one of the other events that happens during there. You have these. For me, I was all alone for a lot of this thing. And so there was absolutely a day, and it was funny. I remember thinking I was riding throughout the day, and I'm like, man, and this no lie, I was riding along. I'm just like, I just need a damn hug. I literally want some human touch, and I just need a hug. And I showed up to, I think it was Missoula Harley Davidson, the checkpoint. I rolled in there. Again, my friend Shell is there. And I don't even know how it came up, but somehow I said that. And so she gave me a big hug. And then all the ladies at the checkpoint there were all very happy to fill my need. And it may sound weird, but at that point in time, man, you couldn't have done much better for me. So just refill yourself a little bit.
Right. Yeah. So now I'm gonna end up open this up for some Q&A. Oh, that's the wrong button there. Oh, actually, no, this is the right one. It turned into this. But if you guys got any questions for Bryan, drop them down in the comments in the chat, and I will go through some of them in the chat that was already in here. Share, we already answered that one. Will you ever do another Hoka Hey ride? Answer is yes. Let's see. Matt Hansen. Once you had experience from the first 4 to 5 days, did your approach to the route change or did it become easier by like getting into a groove? Did the mileage all compound on your body as you progressed?
Yeah, so you definitely got in a groove. I mean, as a rookie, like I said, those 7 pages of directions right off the bat. I mean, it was like, oh my God, what did I just get myself into? I mean, it was it was tough. I mean, it was tough, and so you definitely got into a groove. I know, knowing what I know now to go repeat that, man, I'd be in such a stronger position just having that experience, so much more comfortable with it. So that absolutely changed from the riding standpoint. It's going to sound kind of silly, but literally when I just stopped and thought about it and reflected back, you remember Forrest Gump and how he talked about when he went for his run, right? And it literally, I mean, no lie, it literally was just that way. So I got up, I got on the motorcycle and I rode. When I was hungry, I stopped and got something to eat. When I needed fuel, I stopped and got fuel. When I was tired, I laid down and rested. When I had to take a dump, took a dump, and that was it. So that's all I did for the whole 10 days. I was always focused. I didn't stop and smell the roses, even preparing for this, Joe. I told you I didn't take a lot of pictures. A lot of people in the challenges, a lot of people in the challenge will say, hey, man, make sure you're going to take a lot of pictures. You'll regret it. You'll regret not taking pictures. And for me, it was never about that because this was always about completing the challenge. I've been very fortunate. I've traveled out west a lot. I've seen a lot of beautiful spaces, and we rode through some of the most awesome parts of this country, some of the most awesome parts of Canada that exist. We absolutely did. And I know I missed a lot of it. I rode through a ton of it at night when you couldn't see anything. I didn't take a lot of pictures, but for me, I never cared and I don't regret it because it was about the challenge. It literally was about the challenge, and so, yeah, you pulled up one of the pictures of the sunset. I can't tell you how many times I saw just awesome images like this, mountains and sunsets and sunrises and, nonstop. I mean, just the beauty of it all. That's Canadian Rockies up in Western Canada somewhere. That picture, I didn't send it to you, but there's a picture of a rock right in front of it that I took a nap. So I laid down with my head on this rock and that view in the background one morning when I was having trouble staying awake. And so absolutely saw all that beauty. But I never regretted not taking pictures. I know what I saw and I know what I was there for. So.
Right. And this reminds me, one thing I didn't show was what the bike looked like after you got done. So here's the picture of the bike after it was completed. The thing is wrecked.
It is. It is.
How long did that take you to clean?
Yeah, so I actually washed it in Homer. I got in trouble from all the Hoka guys. Like, you can't do that. That's illegal. So I had the prettiest looking bike there. I took it to the car wash and got some of the shit off of it. Yeah, but by the time I got home, going back through Canada and all that stuff, it was trashed again. Yeah, I ended up. I never do this. I always clean my bike myself, but I actually gave it to a relative, and she detailed it for me. But I'm telling you, I don't think you can ever get the dirt of Western Canada and the Alcan. I don't think it comes off. That bike is. The chrome is shiny, but when you look at that bike, I know there's still part of Canada and Alaska buried in that thing. It's got some grind that don't come off. So,
yeah, I bet. All right, let's pull up another question here. Let's see. Lori Hernandez says, "Were you ever afraid? Did you ever encounter any wildlife after getting out of the cities?"
yeah. So I saw, there was plenty of moose and a couple of bear and plenty of deer and small animals and all that stuff. So buffalo in parts of the country. So saw plenty of that stuff. But again, none of it none of it was ever in a position that it caught my attention, and I've done lots of riding in various parts, and there's been plenty of animals that got my attention before. On this ride, again, I just say I was very fortunate. I never had any of those close encounters. Other people did, but I was lucky. So
Right. Next question from Keith Blackston. How many miles would you ride between stops?
so for the most part, when I could, so up until I got into Canada, pretty much it was fuel to fuel. So I pretty much didn't get off the motorcycle until I needed fuel. And so, you're depending on where you're riding and how you're riding, you're talking, I don't know, 180 miles, give or take, in rough numbers. Once I got into Canada, I was probably too conservative. I know some guys pushed their luck further than me, but Canada, man, fuel was tough. You just never knew what you were going to have. You didn't know if you were going to end up with 30 miles to a fuel station or 60 miles. And so I stopped short. I was probably only getting 100 miles. If I had 80 to 120 miles on fuel and saw a gas station, I was stopping, and it ended up costing me some time, but I never ran out of gas. So
Right. Yeah. Better safe than sorry. I'm sure there's people that run out of gas doing that all the time.
I know there's a story from one of my friends, Pat Cornell, and his buddy Jack Daniels. So they were pushing their luck, and Jack ran out of fuel. So Pat still had some. He ran up, found a gas station, asked the guy, "You got a gas can?" Guy didn't have a gas can. He had a Folgers, like the red Folgers coffee can. That's what he had, plastic container with a plastic lid. And he's like, "Well, I guess that's what we're going to have to make work." And so a lot of these guys run hydration systems. So he had one of them water jugs mounted on his saddlebag guards. What just so happened, that Folgers coffee can fit right down inside of his water jug. And so that's how he was able to take fuel back up the road to his buddy that had run out of gas. So
yeah. And then Lou Sherman says, used to follow this dude anywhere, but he finds too many gravel and dirt roads now. LOL. Great job on the Hoka Hey ride. Love following your travels. That's funny. There was another question in here. From Southern Hogs. Did you do anything specific to get physically prepared for the ride? If you haven't covered that already. So physically, I asked about mentally.
Yeah, so I've been a runner for a long time, and I ride bicycle along with riding motorcycle, and so for me, I already consider myself pretty physically fit. So I didn't do anything out of the ordinary, because like I said, I already exercise a lot. I would encourage it other people. It definitely helps because it's going to wear on you again, mentally and physically. So anything you can do to make sure you're prepared.
Absolutely. And then there was another question. I can't find it, but they asked about if you had to do any maintenance while you're on the trip, because that's a long ride, and if you're doing oil changes, typically like 4,000 or 5,000 miles, but at that point, I think you're probably just rolling with it.
Yeah, so I started with a fresh set of tires, and I've ridden a ton, and I know I can get roughly 17,000 miles out of my tires. So I knew I was going to be pushing it on the way home, but should have been fine. So I started with fresh tires, was good, made it home on that set of tires, and changed them afterwards. Service wise, I intended to try to catch service when I can, and so at the first checkpoint in Arkansas, I just happened to roll in there at the right time, asked them how long it would take to do a service, and they said 15 minutes, and turned it in 15 minutes. And so I went ahead. Wow. It was short. I only had like 3,500 miles on the since I started with a fresh service. So I had about 3,500 miles on it. So it was short, but I didn't know when I was going to be able to get a service again. And so I just went ahead with it. From there, it didn't get serviced again until on my way home in Edmonton, Canada. And so that next service, I think it was up to, I don't remember, it was like 8,500 or 9,000 miles on the next service, because it just didn't work, and I wasn't willing to wait and give up the time. I know a lot of people don't sweat it. Synthetic oils, AMSOIL, and even Harley's Syn 3 and that stuff on synthetic oil, 10,000 miles. Most people don't even blink an eye at it. So,
Right. Yeah. Yeah, you'll be all right. I think it's all a scam. They tell you need to do 5,000 miles and you take the oil out. Like, did it really need it?
yeah, somebody, I don't remember who it was, but they literally, so they ran the whole Hoka Hey on AMSOIL, and they did their oil analysis. They actually had it done, and the oil analysis came back, and it was clean. Actually, I do remember who it was. It was Bobby up out of Michigan. I'm pretty sure is who posted that, and so that was his experience. He said no problem at all. So
Wow, that's awesome. Well, we are coming up on about an hour and a half. Holy cow, it doesn't even feel like we've been talking that long. It was a great story. Don't really have any more questions rolling in, so I want to respect everybody's time. Let me shut this banner off here. But I just appreciate you coming on, man. Incredible story, incredible journey. Is there anything that you want to share with anybody before you go?
I would give a shout out to my wife. She's up in Detroit right now, getting ready to go on vacation with her girlfriend tonight. And she's been texting me. She wanted to be here because she had stuff she wanted to comment. And she's like, I can't get in. I can't ask a question or anything. But she wanted to give you the wife's perspective. So I shout out to her because she had to put up with that, right? So I leave her for 2 weeks, and I'm out here on a motorcycle living under those conditions, and there she is at home watching the tracker like everybody else, right? Watching the cone go around. So she wanted to give a little bit of that perspective, but can't get through. So I'll at least give her a shout out. So
Yeah, she was probably watching that tracker a lot closer than most.
I think she was watching it with a little intensity. She at one point she took our youngest boy, and he had it hooked up to the TV, and so they had it literally on the TV. I think 24/7. So.
Oh wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, all right, Bryan, I'm gonna go ahead and sign off here. Again, thanks for coming on. Awesome story, and I really enjoyed this conversation.
I appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share.
Hey, no problem, man. All right, guys. I appreciate you all tuning in. Fantastic time. Another huge shout out to Break Free for sponsoring this episode. Make sure you check them out. Link down in the description. And we'll end up seeing you next time on the next episode. And as always, this is Jogo with Jogo Motorcycle Adventures. Until next time, ride on.